Imagine if the most famous painting in the world, the Mona Lisa, holds the answer to a 500-year-old mystery, the disappearance of Da Vinci's The Battle of Anghiari. Welcome back to Painted Veil and part 2 in our series on Leonardo's missing masterpiece, The Battle of Anghiari. I'm Julian, and that Mona Lisa bombshell coming up. But first, a quick recap on where we're at. Leonardo commissioned to paint an enormous fresco of the Battle of Anghiari in Florence's Palazzo Vecchio. At the same time, Michelangelo was commissioned to paint the Battle of Cascina on the opposite wall of the Sala dei Cinquecento. Neither artist completed their commissions. Decades later, Giorgio Vasari was commissioned to remodel the Sala dei Cinquecento, painting a new fresco in front of where Leonardo worked. And in that work, the Battle of Marciano, Vasari left behind the tantalizing clue, 2 words written on a green battle standard, Cerca Trova, seek and you shall find. Now that we're caught up, let's dive in. When the humanist Leon Battista Alberti coined the term uomo universale, man can do all things if he will, he may well have been describing Giorgio Vasari, painter, architect and art historian, who's at the centre of our mystery for many reasons. First, we know as much as we do about Leonardo's The Battle of Anghiari, due in large part to Vasari and his landmark book, The Lives of the Great Artists, in which he talks about Da Vinci and this work. Second, when both Leonardo and Michelangelo abandoned their commissions in the Palazzo Vecchio, Vasari was the one appointed later to make sense of the Sala dei Cinquecento alongside other major works undertaken at the Palazzo Vecchio. Vasari designed and completed some of the most famous and well-known aspects of the building, including its staircase, apartments, and the studiolo of Francesco I. And of course, there is the renowned Vasari corridor, which enabled the Medicis to move back and forth from the Palazzo Pitti in Oltrarno, or the other side of the Arno, via the Ponte Vecchio to the Palazzo Vecchio. And in the Sala dei Cinquecento, he raised the ceiling by 7 meters, restructured the walls for massive new frescoes celebrating the city's many victories against Pisa and Siena, and created 39 panels on the ceiling for depictions of key moments in the life of Cosimo de' Medici and Florence. Vasari painted many frescoes in the newly remodeled room, including the defeat of the Pisans at the Tower of San Vincenzo, as well as the Battle of Marciano, which depicted the defeat of Siena by the Republic of Florence, the very painting in which he included the cryptic words Cerca Trova. And the final point that puts Vasari at the centre of our story is, well, he was truly a Leonardo superfan, which may have motivated him to preserve Da Vinci's work. In all, Vasari had the opportunity, the admiration, and the authority to hide Leonardo's work in plain sight and leave behind a clue that still drives historians and all of us to distraction today. For decades, Maurizio Serracini has been on the hunt for Leonardo's lost Battle of Anghiari, and is a pioneer of using sophisticated imaging and other technology, studying more than 4,300 works of art. He's a firm believer that Vasari deliberately built around Leonardo's unfinished masterpiece, preserving it behind his own fresco, The Battle of Marciano. When presented with a clue as mysterious as Cerca Trova, Serracini set about seeing whether there was any way to prove that the Battle of Anghiari still lay behind Vasari's later work. And that is where modern technology came into the picture. Serracini and his team secured permission to use advanced imaging techniques allowing them to peer beyond Vasari's fresco without touching it. And not even Dan Brown could have scripted it better. They did find something described as a hidden 16cm cavity, with Serracini telling the media at the time, quote, "It is very likely Vasari created it to protect Leonardo's work." And with this discovery, the Cerca Trova mystery only deepened further. A secret void confirmed, a cryptic clue, and the possibility of a lost Leonardo sealed away for 500 years. But then, here's the catch. The only way to know for sure what lay behind was to somehow go through Vasari's irreplaceable fresco. Interference of any kind with Renaissance artworks tends to draw a lot of attention and divided views. Just look at the uproar when the Vatican cleaned Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. Some hailed what they saw as the brilliance and clarity uncovered, others cried sacrilege, claiming centuries of nuance had been scrubbed away. Spoiler alert, we'll unpack that in a future episode. So imagine the outrage when word spread that formal permission had been granted to take the imaging further and allow drilling through Vasari's fresco to explore this hidden cavity found in the search for the lost Leonardo. In 2011, the project began, and to avoid damaging any of Vasari's original painting, the team confined their work to penetrating through existing cracks or areas that had been the subject of past repairs. Through these holes, they then inserted tiny endoscopes to search the void beyond. What did they find? Well, first, confirmation of what the imaging had previously determined. Yes, there was a cavity behind the wall of about 5 centimeters, exactly where the scans had said it would be. Intriguing enough, but then came the bombshell. There were traces of black pigment found on the hidden wall. And it wasn't just any black pigment. The team said, quote, "The material found behind the Vasari wall shows a chemical composition similar to black pigment found in brown glazes on Leonardo's Mona Lisa and St. John the Baptist, identified in a recently published scientific paper by the Louvre, which analysed all the Da Vinci paintings in its collection. A secret chamber, a hidden clue, and the same paint as the most famous portrait in the world. It was almost too perfect a mystery. But just as excitement mounted in the wake of these discoveries, the clouds of opposition also started to intensify, with art historians, Florentines, and members of the global arts community asking the obvious question, at what cost comes the truth? Whilst these discoveries offered a tantalizing hope that with the existence of a void, perhaps it was true that whatever was left of Leonardo's Battle of Anghiari was hidden inside, protests against continuing the exploration grew. And in 2012, permission for any further penetration of Vasari's The Battle of Marciano was withdrawn, its secrets untouchable and hidden once more. There's another theory about the Battle of Anghiari, that Leonardo himself botched it with an experimental painting technique. This theory suggests that the Battle of Anghiari was never finished at all, with Leonardo abandoning the project after 2 years, frustrated by the poor results of the painting technique he'd employed. Instead of using a traditional buon fresco method of pigment directly applied to a layer of wet plaster, he adopted a method of applying oils and varnish onto a dry wall which had been prepared with a base layer including beeswax and gesso, hoping it might deliver richer colours in the finished work. It didn't. And how do we know things didn't work out? That's right, Vasari, who described the paint sliding right off. Quote, he made a composition of so gross an admixture that it began to peel off in such a manner that in a short time he abandoned it, seeing it spoiling. It's classic Leonardo, an inventor always experimenting, and it wasn't the only time that the results were less than ideal. His Last Supper in Milan, completed in 1498 before he began his work in Florence, was also painted with a risky method, not on fresh plaster, but on a dried wall with oil paints. The result? A masterpiece that began to decay within decades, not helped by centuries of humidity, including from the effects of a nearby kitchen. So, in this same way, the Battle of Anghiari may have deteriorated, as Vasari describes, and what was left on the walls of the Sala del Cinquecento deteriorated further over time. But what that doesn't mean is that there was nothing there at all when Vasari came to do the remodelling works of the Palazzo Vecchio. Knowing Vasari and his admiration for Da Vinci, he might have resolved to protect what remained and left whatever still existed in place, protected by a wall in a hidden cavity which we now know absolutely exists. And there's a final related theory, with some experts even arguing that Leonardo never put brush to wall at all, and that the Battle of Anghiari existed only as a cartoon, a ghost of an idea. The theory links to the suggestion again that Da Vinci's techniques were responsible, with art experts claiming it was his preparation of the fresco wall that failed, and that he never even started painting in the Sala del Cinquecento. A 500-year-old mystery that continues to divide opinion with conflicting and unresolved theories. But maybe the answer is something different than a single theory. It's possible elements of all theories to hold some truth at the same time. For example, it may well be that Vasari protected what remained of the Leonardo behind the new wall because he couldn't bring himself to getting rid of it, even though the work may have been at the time in a terrible condition due to Leonardo's chancy technique. What we do know is that the only hope for a definitive answer still lies hidden, and now perhaps always will be, behind the walls of Florence's Palazzo Vecchio. And that concludes our debut two-part series on the Battle of Anghiari, a mystery that still haunts Florence and the art world 500 years later. Which theory do you believe? Did Vasari hide Leonardo's lost masterpiece? Or did it slide off the walls of the Palazzo Vecchio? Or maybe it never existed at all? Tell us in the comments, we'd love to hear your take. If you enjoyed this journey through the Painted Veil and want more mysteries of the art world, make sure to like, subscribe and share this episode. It helps us keep unveiling the secrets and lost stories of art history. And thank you so much to everyone who subscribed, liked and commented on episode 1. It's great to have you on this journey. And next time, we take on one of the most explosive scandals in art history, the Nazi-looted masterpieces of World War II and a missing Raphael conservatively worth $100 million today. Someone must know something. Don't miss it. Until then, bye for now.